Hi there, welcome to another Association of Former British Colonies educational video. Today I'm joined by Shweta Barge and our topic today is Colorism in South Asia. My name is James Boston. I'm the founder of the Association of Former British Colonies. The association intends to examine the legacies of British colonisation through educational content, social dialogue, and by exploring the case for reparations. The legacies of British colonisation are very controversial. Some say that they can be seen worldwide. Some argue that British colonisation has had a positive effect in parts of the world. Others argue that it has had the opposite. The issue of colorism is an issue that manifests itself within many former British and European colonies. The question as to how far colorism is a legacy of British or European colonisation is an important topic to discuss. And that's why we felt that it was very important to have this conversation today. As previously mentioned, I'm joined by Shweta Barge. Shweta is an author, poet, storyteller, research analyst, and a University of Oxford alumni. She was elected Oxford University Student Union Officer. She has been in the development sector for over a decade, focusing on social justice and governance following her degree in social work. She published her single-author book in 2013 on Denotified Tribes of India and her poetry book, Salt and Pepper, in 2022. She is the founder of Indigenous Intellectual Women's Collective and Colour No Bar Let's Talk, unravelling generational and ancestral trauma. She speaks on gender, race, indigeneity, decoloniality, and healing. Shweta, I'd like to welcome you to the Association of Former British Colonies platform.
Thank you so much, James. It's an honor to be associating with this wonderful initiative.
Excellent. So I think a really good starting point is to tell us a bit more about yourself and your backgrounds.
Yeah, so this is very interesting topic that you have brought me in because like India is known as or portrayed as a very colorful country, or Indian subcontinent per se, like South Asia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan. I mean, you just name it and we have it. What kind of the colors, the kind of weathers, the variety of colorful people. But then in that, what we have missed out is how colorism and its complexities have been functioning in this disguise, because we are not just Diwali, we are not just colorful Holi, or we are not just, celebrating and dancing around people. We have severe issues which are completely ignored. And there are so many complexities that existed in pre-colonial and colonial and post-colonial India. So these kind of awareness started to come to me when I think I reached teenage. My name Shweta is derived from a Sanskrit word called Shwet, that literally means white. And it is some kind of relief to Indian parents that, okay, she can be sold. So she doesn't have to be worried a lot as much as my other fellow Indian women would have to be worried, who have a little darker skin and who may have a variety of different shades in Indian marriage market. Because for women, it is highly crucial that how we are operated in Indian matrimonial business, because we still do have very much existence of arranged marriage, because we do have a caste system or religion based very strong identities, and that makes a lot of influence on how women are perceived. So it starts at very, very, very young, and for me it gets personal and political both, because I have seen that in family, the way the daughters are raised. And I come from an area, very small suburban district on Maharashtra and Karnataka's border, that's Sangli, and it is full agricultural area. I mean, it's like almost 74 to 75% of the area is agriculture. India or Indian subcontinent has always been agricultural land. So it is very obvious for us to have that tanned skin, or those kind of the skin colors that we are talking about today. We'll get into detail. But then making us feel bad about what our history is, or what kind of our laborer or class, or the history of working in the agricultural fields has been robbed from us, is what I feel. Because if you're working in the field, obviously you are exposed to the sun. It is very obvious that your skin is going to tan. You're going to pass that on to your offsprings. I mean, it's really common sense. So I don't understand how people perceive that. I mean, my skin will be very different after the summer of India, like it's over in June. I mean, we must see what kind of multi-billion-dollar industry we are talking about when it comes to South Asia. The capitalism has swept it over. And I have seen how your color is linked with your success, your failure, or how it is linked to being ugly, and how you have to do more or little less depending on your skin tone. So if you have a little lighter skin tone, you're relieved. But then you are continuously bombarded to be protected, because if you're lighter skin, it also indicates in these continental sense where you will get a little more attention from the men. So you will get more restrictions, and you are supposed to not be exposed, and you're supposed to maintain that until you're sold in marriage, or like I continuously say sold, because that becomes a very, very crucial turning point for women, marriage. And I have also seen in the family where my other siblings or my cousins who have a little darker shade, we can call it a sawnla color. And we see that in matrimonial businesses, how variety of shades are reflected: wheatish, brown, whitish, or that is Indian English, a little lighter skin, or pearl white color, or pearl beautiful, that kind of, this pervasive things of the. So as a woman, I am not at all given any kind of attention or priority to my heart or to my intelligence, to my brain, to my other capacities. But I'm again reduced to only two things: production and reproduction. So the kind of offsprings I'll produce, will they be brown? Will they be wheatish? Will they be white? Will they be pearl white? So you see the kind of agonizing and horrendous colorism that exists in our society is very beautifully covered in the name of colorful people. But that's not true. I mean, women have been fighting for this particular issue recently a lot. And I remember when I was working with the community, and we used to organize a lot of community-based projects with youth group in the slums or in the rural areas. And I had seen, we have like humongous matrimonial ads, like in newspapers, like you name, every newspaper has like a full page of matrimonial ads. And now with the digitization, all the websites. And I remember a few years ago, I was going through, and there are advertisements like given, like, what do you want? The kind of bride is wanted, and it was written color no bar. So that person might have thought that it is so progressive of them that, oh, we are so progressive that we are okay with anything. But then that's the whole thing. When you say color no bar, what does exactly it mean? And then when I started this discussion with these fellow young adults, they started highlighting the caste issues. They started highlighting indigeneity. They started highlighting how it manifests in Indian subcontinent or in South Asia. Then when I went to Oxford, when I got the exposure at international level, it was altogether different world, where I got an opportunity to talk to Latin American fellows, or my African friends, or my other Indian friends, or other South Asian friends, because I have degree in modern South Asian studies. So we were very much covered into South Asian, flora. And they highlighted the same issues, and they said, oh, it's not only in India, it happens in Bangladesh, it happens in Pakistan, it happens in Afghanistan, it happens in Sri Lanka, very much active. And then my first assignment was on patriarchy in South Asia, and it was also highlighted there that how colorism affects women when it comes to gender way deeply than it affects to men. I'm not at all saying that it doesn't affect men, because we have seen how Fair and Handsome has debuted in South Asian markets, so gender no bar. So the thing is that when it comes to women, we already have hierarchies, we already have other issues, but then color becomes very dominant issue. And when we introspect, where do we get these issues from? It is very deep rooted in colonial and also a kind of Brahminical, the caste system that we have in India, because in Indian context, the upper caste or the Brahmins will have a lighter skin tone, and all the other people who will be from the lower depressed class will they had to have a darker skin tone. So it very much identifies who is who. It also becomes very easier racial segregation point of view for indigenous people. It becomes very easily racial segregation for the lower caste communities. And recently we have seen that women from these communities face far more severity of the issues, because now even men from these communities don't want to marry women with darker tones. So like Fanon said in his black face, white mask, the same issue we see here. So the cycle of rejection continues. And the cycle of rejection generally is very easily passed on to women, and through women, their children, and in children, daughters. So it becomes very personal, because that's how I thought that I have to start talking on these matters.
Thank you very much. So, you've talked a bit about how colorism continues to affect modern day South Asian communities, but you also mentioned British colonization. So how exactly does colorism relate to British colonization, or the British Raj more specifically?
Well, colorism is one aspect of what colonization did to South Asian continent, and like in pre-colonial, we will call it India. Uh, I mean, there are multiple aspects how colonialism still affects people in our day-to-day life. Colorism just happens to be one of the parts. So we have language, we have education, we do have other barriers like religion, we all have borders, we have migration, we have many other things that happened in 1947 or later in 1970s, and they still continue and they still exist and they still do affect our day-to-day life. When it comes to colorism, I think it has come to a point where the marketization, the digitization, and advancement of capitalism has played a very huge role in contemporary times, especially in last few decades, where uh, people started viewing this colorism as a superiority or inferiority aspect. I don't know when exactly Indians or South Asians started thinking or linking white color as superiority and anything else or the people of color is inferior. But I can confirm that it is very much passed down to us from the way Britishers have treated us in our history and colonization, where all the Indians in some or the other way were enslaved, or were treated as secondary or third citizens, were treated as savages or primitive, were treated as mere like a production or the reproduction gain. And it is their point of view to look at us, a top to bottom point of view, which we have subconsciously carried on. So it hasn't left. I still argue that colonization has not left us, because if colonization would have left us, we wouldn't have been looking at us from the exact same colonial point of view. And it is absolutely not kind of aware, it is not in the awareness, it is not in people's awareness. And people are still getting this understanding. And I think Black Lives Matter played a humongous role in these discourses, where brown people have finally started accepting that they are brown and they are not they are people of color and they are not different. Because you see, we also like South Asian population, or the brown population overall, also has very discriminative view to African population. If you will have a look at our few songs from 70s and 60s, it's derogatory. I mean, they should be banned. The way African people are presented in a Bollywood movies or the Bollywood songs, it's derogatory. It's non-human. And where do we get that from? Or it is very interesting to view how in cinema it is presented, right? The women are presented white with the blue eyes, and she is the fabulous woman, wherein the woman, Indian woman, will be someone oppressed, the brown, or someone like that. So you see the trauma, it is a reflection of trauma, that what happened to us. So it is not something it is in awareness of people, or it's not cognitive, but these discourses have to happen because it is going to increase. Because if you see, the discrimination that's happening has taken a very different route through capitalism and the industrialization of beauty industry. We see the way the beauty pageants are happening. We can see who's getting the Miss World, the Miss Universe, which country is is in focus, the kind of brands they endorse, the kind of modeling industries working. So there are many research who very clearly indicate it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is not only something that can be overlooked as, yeah, there is colorism. No, it is pervasive and it is increasing. It is unfortunate. So what do we mean when we say that everything and everyone has to be white? Because how do brown or black become white? It is nearly impossible. And how much white? I mean, even if I go to any parlor just to get a haircut or something, I'm telling you the day-to-day story. And the woman will ensure to highlight, oh, you can get this bleaching done, you can get these creams, you can get these. If you go to any market, any kind of product, no matter what product you have, it is written very clearly fairness. It adds into the fairness, anti-blemish. I mean, I can understand sun protection, but I cannot understand having to hate your skin. And how much? I mean, how much white is white? How much white is acceptable? So if I have a lighter skin, how much lighter do I have to get? And where do others who do not have that skin tone, where do they stand? I mean, where do women start? And where do this discrimination get? So you see this cycle of self-hatred that has started in the colonization, where we had slavery, we had genocides, we had mass killings, still continues in different forms.
Okay, so I want to really get into the history and understand how colorism in South Asia may have formed. So how did British colonization really influence attitudes towards colour? I mean, were the British passing certain policies or certain legislation when they were ruling India? How do you think that was done specifically?
Well, you see, when that happened, the colonization per se started, obviously they were outsiders and they came from Europe, and Indian subcontinent has had many Western visitors or colonizers. It's not only British, and obviously they must have had certain viewpoint to look at people or the kind of people they have looked. And when they arrived in these countries, like especially in global south, and they see the completely different people who look different, who act different, who don't have their religions, who don't have their spiritual practices, who act differently, who live differently, who their definition of rich are different. So the kind that reflects in the way they have treated people, be it through their policies where some people were allowed to get into certain kind of jobs. We also have to understand that colonizations, especially British colonizations, relationship with people varies. It's not same. So I'll start with indigenous people, because indigenous people were the people who came into the resistance with British in the beginning, like it started from early 16th and 17th century, as soon as they arrived in India, because they needed wood, they needed to invade forests. So their intervention with the naval and the other services that required any kind of forest material was completely battlegrounds for indigenous people. So indigenous people have been fighting for over, say, 300 or 400 years now, and it's a lot, and it's still not over. And that's why for indigenous people, it becomes crucially traumatizing, and it is very living trauma, because unfortunately, it's still not acknowledged and viewed and received. Because you see, if we are fighting for 400 years, people have died. I mean, I'd like to give you an example of my own tribe. Like, we are a group of around 700 tribes, to be particular 698 nomadic and denotified tribes, out of which approximately 300 tribes were declared criminal by birth. So you see that racial superiority complex that comes, and here also the role of caste plays in, where caste is also based on purity by birth. So British were very much influenced and very much played on what already existed in those particular continents or those particular geographies. They didn't, how do I say, only minimize it. So you see, like I come from pastoral community. Some part of my indigenous communities were kings and rulers who were later defeated, and we also defeated British like 18 times. But then, as I think after late 17th century, the kind of the militarization happened that completely changed how the fights happened, or the battles happened, or the wars happened in the colonial states. And many of us were taken onto the plantations, be it tea plantation, be it rubber, be it tobacco, be it coffee, and they were slaved and then entered into the indenture labor. So we were also called hill coolies, so, and it is based on the skills. So we had a knowledge of herbs, and we knew what kind of herb is useful, how to pick that, because you see, tea picking is the main crucial part in tea plantation. And the kind of indenture labor we had is foreign. The damp places, 500 people were transported only in container over in the ships to Assam tea plantations, and almost all died. And we do not find any kind of written material so far on any kind of India's struggle. So indigenous people are angry, and I'm not gonna lie. And we have many other thousands tribes who have died fighting for their land, and we rarely find any kind of mention in India's history or the colonial history, because you see, it started with indigenous people because they were into the forest and they were taking care of their land, so they fought for their land and they have died. But then when you come to different other groups, for example, like in India, we have caste system under Hinduization, and most of the people did not have any kind of access for education, literacy, or any kind of other work but labor. So the Dalit communities or ex-untouchable communities were in support of colonization. Many Bahujan communities were. So the majoritarianism is called Bahujan communities in India. So they do support colonization in a way where they think that they already had slavery under Hinduism. So they didn't have any kind of access, and it was worse than slavery. So the slavery is comparable to the slavery in Africa. And that kind of thought process also gives them that, at least with the schools opening, they received some kind of education and some kind of freedom. And that's how they also view that it is their liberation point that came in. So their relationship is different. British also played on Aryan race theory, and they also created martial race theory. So wherein it is said that some communities are born good fighters, and they were employed into the military and passed on from these countries to that countries in world wars. where we had to fight on behalf of British. So you see, there is a lot that has happened. We are not only talking about, okay, only these killings or that killings, but the overall view of a colonizer to colonized is very much derogatory. And we get that through various aspects, be it Jallianwala Bagh, or be it the Bengal famine, be it through Madras famine. I mean, millions and millions of people died in famine, wherein that source, the food and other material was sent back to Britain. I mean, so it is not only colonization, but it is a thought process that these people do not deserve to be lived. And that is quite very much racial. And I think people do carry that on. It doesn't go anywhere. So when I talk about this, I also talk about the trauma that still lives in various aspects. And you cannot heal if you don't acknowledge and accept that this has happened. And I think many communities are still at a place where they are still fighting to be acknowledged that this has happened, be it indigenous communities or be it most depressed or oppressed class communities, that colonization was different for us. Because we also have to see in colonization, the British colonization, who were the communities who were also assisting in the administration, or who were with the colonization in the offices, in the administration, in the policy making, and why they have failed to inform about depressed and oppressed class. Because if others did not have any kind of access to education, literacy anyway, how would they inform what policies need to be done? So you see, the colonization has very different aspects, and there were many other things that were happening in late 18th and 19th century until British left. So the colonization in Indian subcontinent overall per se differs for all the people. And we have a saying in India that our language, culture, and our issues differ every 20 kilometers. So you understand how we perceive everything that has happened in that particular, because if we are to say very technically, administratively, or politically, most of the affected areas are the ports, like Mumbai, Madras, Kolkata, and then where there were dense forests, where they had very dense forest for the navy building, etc. So these are the populations who have had different kind of interaction with British colonization, and the rest of the people have had different kind of interaction with British colonization. So the policies do reflect even today.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. In the Caribbean, there is also an issue with colorism, and that very much stems from the transatlantic slave trade, where often forced sexual relations between slave owners and enslaved Africans were very common, and that led to children being born and children of lighter complexions. And from that, a kind of hierarchical system was created. I'm also aware that in British India, as it was formerly known, there were occasions where British colonials did mix and have children with Indian women. So on that note, can you tell me more about Anglo-Indian communities and how they may have played a role or been influenced by the sort of colour system or hierarchy that came to exist?
Right. So Anglo-Indian community in India, it traces its origin as per the official policy of the British East India Company, and it was to encourage the marriages of its officers with local women. So it was a very clear policy, British policy, where they encouraged to have the relationships with the local women. And to be very clearly defining, like if I'm to define it in the administrative terms, the term for Anglo-Indian, the first appears in Government of Indian Act 1935. In present context, Article 366(2) of the Constitution of India states that an Anglo-Indian means a person who father or any other whose other male progenitors in the male line is or was of European descendants, but who is domiciled within the territory of India and is or was born within such territory of parents habitually resident therein and not established there for only temporary purpose. In a nutshell, Anglo-Indians can be differentiated in two groups, those with mixed Indians with Indian and British ancestry, and of those British people who were born and residing in India. So the population around independence of India was estimated, say, around 100,000 or 150,000. And in 2011 census, it is suggested that only 296 people, which is debated because they have All India Anglo-Indian Association, and they have very much denied those claims because the association asserts that there are many more Anglo-Indians in the country. But when in day-to-day terms, I think most of them left India. Also because we have to see the post-independence environment that we have in India, because it was very much against anti-British, anti-colonization, and I'm sure it must have been very risky for people of those descendants to stay back and to reside, because someone who is of this generation can very clearly identify these kind of aversion that Indians had in those centuries against Britishers or colonizations or anyone who was descendant through our movies and films. And that's something that is visible. So many currently, it is said that have left India and have settled in either their country of origins or in other Western countries. So in Bangladesh, it is estimated there are around 200,000, in Pakistan less than 1,500, and many other have migrated to Canada, Britain, USA, New Zealand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia. But there is a recent development that has happened because as per the constitution, they were given two parliamentary seats. And in 2020, January 2020, the government of India has done the constitutional amendments, the 126th amendment, under which those two provisions or two representative seats are now dissolved or discontinued per se. So that is the we can say the trajectory of how it is started and how it is today. But it was also, we have to remember that those two representative states in legislature at that time were also promised only for a decade, because they were not based on discrimination, but only to represent and protect the population that is mixed population, or those who want, or British who want to stay back.
Okay. So where, in terms of Anglo-Indian communities, was there any favoritism towards them because they may have been of a lighter complexion?
I don't think so, because as I said, the kind of atmosphere India had after independence was very much, I'm sure, up against or opposite the people of descendants who were from the British citizens. But we do have some actors who have, who have stayed here and who do impress us with their acting, and they do get like such colonial roles, and it is interesting to see. But except that, that is their overall exposure to, in day-to-day life for Indians is quite negligible, because I don't think even they accepted very gratefully that we are Anglo-Indians, but they very much adjusted with the Indians, and they did ensure to assimilate and be part of the community. I think today the scenario is far different than it must have been in early 50s up to 80s, because I'm sure those eras were very difficult for anyone of the colonizers' descendants.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving towards the sort of last section of our discussion. So
Yeah.
is colorism being challenged in South Asian communities at the moment?
A wonderful question. Indeed. I mean, you see, we do have a, a kind of movement that's coming up, but mainly led by women, because as I started to say that women are the one who are targeted the most. But we also have to see how it manifests. So a research published in August 19, the Grandview research found that the market size of global skin lightening products was around 8.3 billion in 2018. And the Asia Pacific region, the largest market, over 54% of its sales. And only the product segment is the cream category is 53%, and India ranks in one of the top 5 countries, along with China, Japan, Indonesia, and South Korea. Um, Now there is a new research that estimates, which is recently published, it's a report that says that India Fairness Cream and Bleach Market Overview 2018-2023, it estimates that women's fairness cream category is anticipated to achieve market revenues of more than 5,000 crore rupees, that is approximately 60 billion US dollar by the year of 2023, that is just next year. And we also see that many countries, be it Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, they have been banning a lot of fairness creams and products that are found to have very harmful content like lead, mercury, hydroquinone, like which critics also argue that causes cancer. And WHO has now banned the active ingredients like hydroquinone and mercury, which are quite frequently used in unregulated skin products. See, we also have to see here the class matters, because colorism issue is also class, also caste, also colonialism, but also who has the access to have these benefits. Because if it is about linked to your how do I say worth, your self-worth, it affects personal and professional. So if we see the advertisement and the brands that are bombarded on us, they mainly talk about how you having a lighter skin will help you personally and professionally. And that they have succeeded in those aspects, I must say, because we do have a lot of corporate and conglomerates who have been in these businesses that I'm giving you numbers about. But what we are missing is the other industry that operates for a different class, the middle class, the lower class, the working class, because these people, or we cannot afford all the, these very costly materials. And obviously in these kind of creams and products, anything that is available with the instant results, etc., are used. So there are organizations, there are activists, there are actresses in the film industry who have been highlighting this issue, because we see that even in the film industry, which is very, it is like a religion for India, uh, we have seen that only women or men with a lighter complexion, white complexion, or European faces are in the industry or represent the film industry. But it also affects our spirituality and religion, I will say, because we have had discussion on how Jesus has turned from brown to white. But as I arrived in India now, and I see our gods and goddesses are turning white too, and I highlighted that to my father, that do you see our gods are getting a shade lighter? Because you see, the native people or the Aboriginal people, or even people from this continent, um, have different kind of spiritualities and practices. I can give you just right away that comes to my mind, like 2 examples. Like one is Kaluai, Kalubai, or Kalima. just the god. We come from a goddess culture. We do not come from a father god or that kind of culture, because Mother Earth, it's an agricultural land. So we all are the laborers and protectors of the land. The literal translation of these names of these goddesses is Black Mother, the Kaluai or Kalima, that translates Black Mother. So we come from Black Mother, and now that those Black mothers are whitewashed, what do women look up to, or what do men look up to? So we are disconnecting from ourselves, our ancestry, our history, and this digitization is not doing any favors. Our gods are whiter and lighter and fair and lovely too. So you see, it is not only about just one or two aspects, but it is getting deeper, it is getting insidious, and it is pervasive from personal to political. So I don't think a lot have been done and talked about, and that's why we are also engaging into the discourse and dialogues with youth, wherein you have to be your own savior, because the way this industry is working, no one is coming to save us. If we ban, there are campaigns against shadi.com. So shadi.com is the biggest matrimonial site in India, where they had skin tones, like you literally select where before you put your profile, beatish, light skin, pearl white, white, black, whatever that color. So there was a campaign run and they withdrew those categories. Then Times of India, a couple of years ago, they do get matrimonials ads, and they ran an article saying, can we look for education of women and not only their color? And like many actresses have come up and talked, like who might have endorsed previously, like about how they were wrong endorsing skin whitening creams, and now they're endorsing their body. But it's a lot to do with the awareness that we are receiving with, again, the Black Lives Matter movement, and that makes a huge impact. Like in Beyonce's latest brown skin girl, the Indian girl, the South Asian woman was represented, and the representation matters, doesn't it? And then we have to have these dialogues, how pervasive this is getting, because it's not only about if I see race or if I see ethnicity or if I see color, but what, how deep it is, because whatever has happened, whatever shade we have, it does carry some kind of history and some kind of linkage to what has happened in the past, and it does carry today. So even women especially are at the receiving end of this a huge discrimination. That is something new that we do not need to deal with, because we have humongous issues, and we have to learn and understand how pervasive this is getting, that women are suicidal. I'm not joking. Like women who do not get, young girls who cannot get married only because of their color, they're suicidal, because what else can they do? Your dowry or your the bride price or your marriage cost depends on your color. So if a girl is beautiful, and the beautiful meaning a little fairer skin, she will do better and she will get less costly for parents. And this is something ridiculous. So we have to have these conversations as many platforms as possible, and we have to acknowledge, because if it, this is a trauma, this is a trauma continued for 75 years, so no one has left us. You see, that's why I say colonization is very much present today, and colorism is only one aspect of how colonialism is very much present in our psyche. And we will heal only if we acknowledge that this has happened, this exists, and now how we do with what has happened. So that's what I engage with the people on trauma and healing, that we have to learn to accept that this has happened to us, and then only we can move forward. At least let's not pass it on to the next generation.
Thank you. And one more final question before we begin to wrap up. So it sounds to me like there is at least the beginning of a sort of challenge and wanting to decolonize beauty standards and show that persons of all skin complexions can be considered beautiful and attractive. How do you think that South Asian communities can effectively decolonize beauty standards and have an appreciation that beauty exists in all skin complexions?
Um, First, we cannot only blame the marketing and the advertising industry or the beauty pageants or modeling or anything else, because you see, we live in the digitized world. It is just gonna get pervasive and far more deeper than it can get, and we will also see the layers of the way it manifests in these communities. But we also have the platforms like these where we have to engage and at least make people aware that it's okay with whatever color you have got. And it has nothing to do with your self-worth. It has nothing to do with your success. It is a pure somebody's superstition who thought that there is something called race, and they didn't see some different kind of people, and that's why they thought that someone else is inferior, or maybe they just wanted to loot, and that's why they created a lot of issues. And if we accept that, only then through these, I think, generations campaigns can start. Like to Color No Bar and the other initiative that I am engaging with other, women and men both, because we are seeing that men are also highly attracted to these kind of products, which is a very clear indication how it is working across genders, and how they do not have to get wrapped up into these thought process where, because it's endless. As I started saying, how much light is light? You define how much white, because every time they'll introduce some new lighter shade and you will compete to get that lighter shade. It's practically not possible. So we need these kind of social media campaigns and social influencers talking about these, because you see, in South Asian communities, women do have restrictions to talk about these kind of issues too. There is a certain age group, or there is certain kind of level once women reach, they can discourse or even talk about their issues. Because if a woman is assertive, again, that is an issue, because we do come from South Asia's patriarchal society. So it is very difficult to see women to talk about these issues. But then if we have such educational content, or at least awareness content, where it is it starts subtly, may not be very aggressively, but we have seen how it has made impact, be it matrimonial ads taking out Fair and Lovely, Unilever taking out their Fair and Lovely fair words, and also, so at least it is coming in the psyche. But I think we all have to keep continuously active on social media and whichever platform possible to have discourse on this, and finally just start asserting that I don't want it. Because at the end of the day, it's capitalism, it's a beauty industry. If you reject it, they will have to give you what works, because we see in the Western countries, tanning industry works, right? So they want to be brown in summer and we want to be white all the other time. So humans.
Interesting. Thank you very much. And how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your work?
Thank you so much. So they can reach to me to my email ID, connectshwetab@gmail.com, connectshwetab@gmail.com. And I am available for any kind of resource or any kind of assistance required in these matters.
Thank you very much, and we'll make sure that is listed in the comment section below. Please make sure that you're following all of the Association of Former British Colonies social media channels. Obviously, we're on YouTube where this will be uploaded. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We have pages and also groups where you can also share content that you're interested in that links to this subject matter. So please engage and just continue the educational content and social dialogue that we've already started. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching.